We'll do presentations first. We'll have Synergy, Steve Durst, and the other Steve. Please come on up. I forget your last name, sir. I apologize.
Trumbo.
Trumbo?
Trumbo.
Trumbo.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Appreciate the opportunity. Steve Durst, Steve Trumbo.
Trumbo.
We have, over the past 3 or 4 months, been sifting through various opportunities from a real estate standpoint for location for solar opportunity to take care of the city's alternative energy efforts, which are going to be about 1.2 megawatts. We have settled, we've discounted various sites for various reasons. Either the electric service didn't quite go that far, Buckshootum Road, the old football fields were financed with Green Acres money, would involve a removal and replacement, very, very time consuming and expensive. At the end of the day, 4 acres or so at what we call the airport industrial grounds, 400 feet, 450 feet dead east of the little building that services the soccer complex, which has a meter, 2 meters actually, in the city's name, and gives us a host meter in compliance with the regulations. And that is a clean, easy, timely deal that can be done that would move very quickly. So the bottom line is that's where we would like to locate the site. Steve will pass out a little rudimentary site plan, as it were. And the bottom line is that we would be willing to pay $5,000 an acre in addition to the savings that would be realized there, which would give the city about a $30,000 an acre yield per year, capitalized under normal real estate terms, creates a value of about $300,000 an acre, which is a nice threshold to set for ensuing users that would come along and be looking for some idea of economics. The other thing it would do is you've got alternative energy right on site, and it would be a nice opportunity for additional users to come along, and we could expand the system and actually open up another profit center to enhance further the city's position. If you bless that site selection and you're ready to move ahead, we will then move formally to go for the interconnection with Atlantic City Electric, which, as you know, we discussed, and you were okay with moving ahead with the interconnection several months ago. There's a little form that we'll fill out and submit to Mr. Russell, and if we can get it back in a couple days, we'll pay the fee and make the application. There'll be 6 to 8 weeks. We think the circuits will accommodate us, and they'll come back, and we think we'll say, okay, go ahead and do your project. And at that point, we're ready to go if you're ready to go. Now, when we came into the town 5-6 months ago, even though I fully understand from long-time involvement that the Board of Education is the Board of Education, commissioners are the commissioners, these are separate bifurcated bodies, I look at it as you've got one taxpayer out there who's less concerned about that than perhaps you are or the Board of Education is. And the $100,000 plus a year that we can save with this first step is not a lot of money. Contemporaneous with going for this project and putting this in place, we would initiate serious activity with ACE, which we've already initiated and gotten very positive feedback, to take care of the street lighting aspect. That will reduce the city's annual street lighting bill from about $600,000 to slightly more than $200,000. Now we're starting to talk about some real money. Coupled with this first step, we're now $500,000 plus a year in savings for the city. We have also met with the Board of, not with the Board of Education, but with the new business administrator, and have gotten an initial favorable reaction. Our savings there would be well over $400,000 a year. Taken together, your taxpayers are going to be looking at an amalgam of $1 million a year, and that's worth doing. We represented to you that any and all of the activities we're describing are on us. Okay, the city Board of Education, you will never write a check for a dime. Every expense is on us, win, lose, or draw. So the bottom line is your ROI will be wonderful. I think we can succeed on all of these things, and we're ready to go. So our suggestion is we would like you to bless the, we'll get together an actual little site plan for you other than the rudimentary sketch you have. But the bottom line is we would like you to approve our efforts to move ahead with that site, and also for us to move ahead in negotiating with ACE to get your street lighting project done where there's some real serious savings. Yes, sir.
Mr. Durst, after the blessing, how long does it take before we're actually saving money?
I think the solar project at the airport would be in place in 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, I would say next spring, yeah.
Okay.
He's at the 9 months. And the
Get through the winter.
the street lighting, I'm not sure the time frames involved there. ACE has to do all the work. I mean, those are the rules for their poles, their spec. There will be a significant front money expense that I've represented to you that Synergy will lay out. It comes back at some point, but we'll front it. It's about $150,000, we're advised. I don't know the time frames to convert your street lighting.
What would cause ACE to want to do this if there's going to be a reduction in their profit?
Well, I
Is it
don't know that
required?
you're reducing their profits, okay? I don't know the breakdown on what their net is versus their gross.
Right.
But the bottom line is they seem more than willing to cooperate with us
Oh,
in
excellent.
this undertaking. I mean, they were enthusiastic about it. We've got a little help in negotiating with them. And we feel good about them being cooperative. I mean, the first entreaties to them were very successful.
There's all kinds of
Incentives for them?
They get incentives to promote energy
Gotcha.
efficiency. You see it in your bills.
And now's the time.
Thermostats, all
Absolutely.
that kind of stuff, right? So they get compensated by pushing energy efficiency.
Gotcha.
The only other thing I'd like to say on the map right there, to explain to you why we chose that site, I think Steve hit it. It's after we go over about 400, 450 feet from the meter that we're connecting to. If we go beyond that distance, then we have to use a step down transformer, so it increases the cost. Originally, we were going to kind of go to the back of the other two fields. It's about 900 feet, so it would have been a lot more expensive to do that. So this is right around 400 feet, and that's why we chose that spot, just if you're wondering.
And the array seems to be just about the size of the entire parking lot area and the soccer
Well,
stadium.
we're talking about 4 to 4.5 acres.
Gotcha.
We'll have an accurate site plan. We'll identify it because the rent we pay will be based on a per acreage price, so you'll
Good.
get every last penny.
Okay.
So one last thing, because we do have these for block. All right, this is the interconnect application that we're doing here. We're doing an aggregated net meter application, and I think are probably the first to do that with Atlantic City Electric. So what we're doing is we're building a site. On site, you have a host meter. That's the refreshment stand at the soccer fields. That's the meter we're going to hook up to. But the field is going to produce 1.2 million kilowatt hours that we're going to send to the police station. There's 5 other meters that will get that electricity. Okay, so the first step with ACE is we have to get you qualified as a municipal entity. And that's what this is here. It's the interconnection for ACE. It's just I'm going to leave it with you, Ron, if that's okay. It's introducing them to the meters that we're going to be affecting, and that they all have to be in the name of the city, and that the city is responsible for those meters. That's pretty much all it is. After that, after they tell us the city qualifies, then we do the technical interconnection application. And all that, Steve said, takes about 6 to 8 weeks.
I know that our city administrator has a question.
This sounds great for the city, but in order for the city to sell land, we'd either have to have a shared service where we're selling with another public entity or some type of consortium.
We're not going to buy land. We're talking about renting it, leasing it. So your income's an
Still think
annuity.
lease, we have to follow purchasing law. That's our
Yeah.
problem.
Well, whatever has to be done from the standpoint of conformity, we'll do.
I hear the word problem. I'm looking for solutions. What needs to be done to make this happen if we decide to go ahead with it?
Purchasing law, if it's not a shared service with another town or it's not part of a cooperative, we have to go out to bid to see if anyone else has a better proposal.
Shared services.
Well, what we can do is, what you're proposing, you want to lease city land?
Yes.
And so we can do a lease. Now, the requirements as to the term of the lease and things like that, it just is going to have to comply with the local land law, the local public land law.
And rough sketch, what can you give me an idea of what that is? And what I'm hearing is this potentially could set this project back
I
forever
don't think
if we're
it's
going
going
to
to delay the project.
Okay.
So, but, do you have counsel that's representing you on this?
Yeah, and we'll have our council
Why don't you have
contact
them
you.
contact me?
Exactly. And whatever has to be worked out from that side of the
Yeah,
line.
please keep me abreast of
You'll work
what's
out.
going on step by step.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just didn't know how far you are along in this. So, if you're ready to move on it, then maybe have your attorney, who's representing you?
Jonathan King
Okay.
from Porzio, Morristown.
Okay, you may want to have him contact me as soon as
You'll
possible.
hear from him in the next day or two,
Get things
Brock.
rolling.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Is this site where the soccer fields are now?
Yeah.
It's directly across the road, and I don't know if it's dedicated or not, that comes in from Bogdan. It's called McCafferty Drive, okay? And as you come down McCafferty, the soccer fields are on your left. Our little square of where it goes would be on your right, but essentially right next to that road.
Isn't that where the new business is going, Brian? If you can come up here, please. We have a business that we're in negotiations with, I believe.
Do we have block and lot numbers for the lot? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of important that we have that.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Brian, but I'm glad you walked in.
Okay.
All right, yeah, I know you showed me a map real quickly, so.
You want to see this one, Brian? They may have it right there.
Yeah, so,
Probably a nicer one.
yeah, maybe you can kind of point it out where
We're looking
you're
to go,
looking.
here's the refreshment building, McCafferty. We're talking about going in a straight line. Meters are on the north side of the building. And it's about 400, 450 feet. Want to stay under 600.
Okay, so right here.
Yeah. Now, if I moved a little bit one way or the other, it doesn't matter much. But have you got something else that contemplates going there or wants to go there?
Yeah, my understanding, it looks like he's pointing on the one corner of where that,
Rogovnati's going?
or not Rogunai, but the LK,
Say it again, Brian.
the LKQ.
LKQ. Okay.
Yeah, that's where it looks like.
What type
Yeah,
of business
and-
is it?
That's a
It's like an auto salvage.
company,
Recycling.
recycling company.
Let me ask a question on this. Is this the property or the company that came to us
A while ago.
quite a while ago? I believe their agreement runs out June 30th, and we have not heard word one from them since they made the
I think we have
proposal.
heard from them, but I think there is a question as to whether they're actually going to.
Okay, so I think we need to seriously look at potentially losing something that we could save the city a great deal
Commissioner,
of money.
that's why I want to bring it up. I don't want to
Absolutely.
sit here and shoot dreams at this group. We need to do our homework so that if we're going to do something with this before we jump into conclusions,
There's no
that we
jumping.
satisfy that property to where or who it has to go to.
Especially the
I'd like to
block
give you
and
a-
lot, because
Go
we
ahead,
need to
Brian.
make sure
Or
it's the
Brock.
same property. I'm not even sure that it is. And-
Well, I'd like to give you a suggestion based on 55 years of commercial real estate development. My understanding is that this is an auto crushing business. Is that what they do?
It's like a
They crush?
recycling.
Recycling?
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice word for crushing. In
That's what
any
they
event,
use.
If they utilize this 150 acres or so, the only crusher I know in the Philadelphia area is at the base of the Passyunk Bridge on the way to the Philadelphia Airport. It's been there for 50 years. That mechanical device that does the actual crushing might occupy 8 or 10 acres. Let's be liberal and say 12, 15 acres. You would then have 140 acres of whatever you want to call it, wrecks. Cars that are ready to be crushed have generally had some kind of a problem. Their life is over. 140 acres at 150 cars per acre. And that includes aisles and circulation, which you would not have in this yard. You're going to have 22,000 derelict vehicles sitting on your 140 acres. In 5 years' time, you're going to have an environmental nightmare. That's the end of my speech.
Thank you.
And Mr. Durst and
Yes.
the commissioners, if I can provide a brief update. When we had a meeting and we had discussed the viability and the importance of the land in the industrial park, we had talked about the possibility of looking to a lease as being a possible solution, especially considering the term of the life for a project such as this. It was a suggestion that was recommended by our supervising planner and by our city solicitor. At this time, I feel that the commission would be best served to take this information to provide it to both engineering and the supervising planner in regard to the many different projects that are currently in process, the letters of intent, or the understandings that we have with these businesses. I also do not feel that it is our place to surmise that any use that's been previously approved by previous commissions through different development projects or even through this commission is up for that discussion or for that examination through the context of this discussion. I think that if we have a standing agreement, our city solicitor would recommend that we honor that agreement, make sure that we follow due process, and that we allow our departments to look at this. In those regards, I would feel that a decision made at this work session or even this regular meeting tonight would not be recommended until our departments have surveyed all of that information.
It's your city, it's your commission, okay? We're here ready to go on economics that we've laid out in front of you with us spending 100% of the money. If you want to sidetrack that or park it pending the outcome of some of these other things I've heard about, so be it. It's your call.
Well, let me just support what Ashley was saying. We need to do our due diligence to be sure that this property is not under contract or under promissory, whatever it's called. However, I want to keep a sharp eye because I believe the time frame does run out at the end of this month for that agreement. That's because I spoke with Sam about that.
If I could just
And-
add something, that Rocket is block 136, lot 1. It consists of 535.3 acres, which we need to be for 5 acres.
I'm sorry, what's the acreage, 35?
535.3 acres. So we can do both.
And you're seeking how many acres?
Just curious, was there any other locations you were looking at other than this one?
We had looked at the abandoned fields. As I say, they're financed with green acres. We had looked at a site on Buckshootum. Unfortunately, the host meter is on an already subdivided lot with the water tank, and accordingly, we couldn't use it. It would have to be on the lot where we were going, and where we were thinking of going, the electric service stops a couple hundred yards to the other side. We've got more than adequate electric service in this area. So cleanest deal without reinventing the wheel is to go right here. And we have been discussing this with you for going on 6 months at this point. We're happy to keep discussing it as long as you wish, but things change. The BPU has dramatically changed their rules, dramatically changed the financing available for alternative energy because there's an emphasis now on offshore wind, and your taxpayers' rates are going to go through the roof as soon as that starts getting implemented. The savings actually will wind up being greater than what we outlined because the rates are going to go sky high. So time is the enemy in anything, in any deal. And the other thing for you to consider as part of the conversation, if you have a crushing facility there with 20,000 plus vehicles stored there, you're going to have circulation. Most industrial areas are located contiguous or next to ports, interstate highways. Here, if this facility went to the airport industrial park, these trucks bringing in these derelict vehicles and hauling out the bales after they're crushed and baled We going right through town, dozens of trucks per day. I think it's something you got to consider if you're looking to add value to this piece of ground. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, you're welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Next presentation is by Bernard Capital Partners, BCV Municipal Infrastructure Partnership.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Ron DiGregorio. I'm a fairly local person. I grew up in Delaware County, outside of Philly. I grew up with Philadelphia Electric Company and just retired there after 35 years of service with Philadelphia Electric Company. Became Exelon, but I like to still say Philadelphia Electric because my dad was a lineman, so continue to make him proud for sure. But I happen as well to go to spend my summers at the Jersey Shore. So I don't know that that qualifies me as a local. In fact, it may qualify me with some of you as a shooby. But our Bernhardt Capital team does include a Cumberland County native. Patrick Callahan is with us, as well as Jeff Eucness. We won't go through a lot of introductions. I'll tell you what we're here to talk to Millville about. I'm kind of excited about it for Millville and for Bernhardt Capital. I joined Bernhardt Capital, a small private equity group, couple $1 billion through a couple different funds, having been raised and deployed predominantly in the infrastructure business. Bernhardt Capital's bought companies that service the power industry and the petrochemical industry and the infrastructure needs of the counties and cities and towns and our great nation. And we kicked off a new fund that's called the Municipal Infrastructure Partnership Fund. And the genius behind this fund is that we can, with this fund, work in partnership with municipalities, townships, cities, what have you, that have municipal services like utility services, water, sewer, like Millville, others, electricity service and such. We work with them in a partnership such that we allow for them, in partnership with us, to securitize, to manage their assets in a way, and the utility being an asset, to manage that asset in a way that allows them to securitize future revenue for the good use of the township or the city, for the good use of the city in public works, in capital improvements. We come to find that this is a very good solution. Some call it concession agreements, but very good solutions where there are municipalities that have infrastructure that they don't want to sell, they don't want to privatize and fully monetize, but yet they have a need. We come here tonight recognizing that Millville has a need, that there's a budget increase, a tax increase associated with the last budget that went through, that there's challenges. Those budgets may be because of good spend in public needs and in public safety and such, but have put Millville at a place where maybe some would consider, tax increases like that challenging. And we come as Bernhardt Capital offering a teaming, a partnership solution, whereby we would come into a concession agreement on your utility system. The city, in these kinds of agreements, the city would continue to own the utility, own the asset, and still maintain all of the rate authority that they have today on the rates. We come in and capitalize, allow the city to clean up balance sheet and get some kind of cash infusion, reduce debt, get some kind of cash infusion. And in doing so, we're doing that with the future revenues. So we're basically monetizing the future revenues of your water or sewer service into upfront capital opportunity for the municipal organization. How you would use that money and how much money would that be comes as a result of a due diligence period that we would do with you. But I would tell you, as we've structured this in other places, that these are done solely in partnerships. All employees of the utility would maintain their existing employment. They would still be civil service employees of the city. We come in, we don't change. We, in fact, have in some places given employment and benefit and pay guarantees for employees. This is really an opportunity for the city, look to manage their asset in a way different financially while giving the city the opportunity to get good capital infusion and attend to maybe some financial challenges and or capital improvement spend needs that you have. So that's a kind of quick overview to kind of give you what we're here to talk about. I do have a deck. I was asked to keep this to about 15 minutes, so I can go through the deck, stop as appropriate as you see fit for questions as we go through the deck, and then, of course, we'd be available for your public comment period or however you see fit, Mayor. So if I may get some technology help here. Thanks, Jimmy. Thank you for your help in getting us set here. Joe. No, I didn't have a stick. This was the one I emailed.
Oh, okay. I emailed it. I thought you were bringing it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, well then we're not going to do a PowerPoint. I'm sorry about that. Well, this isn't my computer. I thought this was your computer. Can you forward it to? Can you get it on that screen? I guess is the question.
Would you like for me to turn off the monitor?
No, I think I'm going to email it from my computer to him, and then we'll be able to.
Yeah, that screen.
Do you have a computer here? Do
But
they
he's gonna
have
have
a
to sign
laptop
on to
here?
his, he has to sign into
Would
his
that work?
email somehow to do that,
It's showing.
on the
It's
laptop.
showing my port should work.
Yeah, but if he sends it to him, then it has to get to his email.
Well, do you have the same kind of plug?
It should have an HDMI.
I believe that contract.
I wonder if she has a flash drive downstairs.
Really?
Well, if she has a flash drive, she could just save it and bring it
Right.
and plug it in.
You might be able to hook up, though. I think it'll work.
Let's see, Jeff. We trying this?
Yes? 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 Yes or no?
We're waiting for him to log in. I don't
Yeah,
want
we
to put
think we got it. There you go.
Better retrieve Jeannie.
Perfect.
She's probably shutting down her power.
Full screen. We're not going to read all the detail on these slides, believe me. Okay. And Jeff, what do I do? Just hit this here. This is a little of Bernhardt Capital. Gives you a little background. The Shaw Group founder, Jim Bernhardt and Jeff Jenkins, two principals from Shaw Group, which is a publicly traded company. They grew that company, took it public, and subsequently sold it to Chicago Bridge and Iron, and subsequently got acquired by McDermott. But those two principals came out of the formation and growth of those companies and formed Bernhardt Capital Group. And like I said, we have about $2 billion. Our first fund was $750 million. Our second fund, 1.2. Mostly, as you can see, the capital companies on the right side, you can see the kind of companies that service the utility or infrastructure businesses or clients throughout industry. Our group came upon, and not difficult to find, the significant need for private U.S. infrastructure funding. You know, many studies out there. I think Jersey specifically has some studies. In fact, has just forwarded some legislation dealing with the advocacy for public-private partnerships to deal with infrastructure needs. But obviously, you know, significant infrastructure needs in many locations. The unique benefits of our partnership structure. Like I said, the city retains ownership and ultimate control of assets, that retains oversight of performance and rate-making authority. The city monetizes cash flows of utility systems in an upfront cash payment. I should note that we work in partnership with the city. And how do you want to do that payment? Could be done over time in lieu of taxes type of payment. Could be an upfront capital for a capital contribution to the city. But typically in these, we come up with, here's what the asset value is to you. We open book, show you how we derive that asset value. By publicly available information, we've assessed the asset value around $32 million today, without just publicly available information. Debt, we would then say, well, what's the debt on that? We'd want to retire the debt or retire the bonds that you have for that, which helps the city because it improves your strength on your balance sheet, right? So we retire that debt. That's about $10 million. That would leave somewhere in that $20 million range of what we think the monetized asset value of that asset could be for you in terms of how you want to use it. You keep the asset. We manage it. We become responsible for all of the capital improvements. You still have authority over rates. And so if there becomes 5 years into a 30-year agreement, a need, this is where partnership and relationship is important, a need for a big capital improvement in the water or sewer system, that gets challenged as it would appropriately, whether it was your own utility management or us, the ones actually paying for the capital improvement, and we would come and work with you in that regard. But again, you maintain rate-making authority. There are potentials in these arrangements to provide some kind of rate relief or rate credits, rate caps. We have arranged those in various situations. And again, you know, we keep the employees as civil servants, so they would still be city employees. They would still have pensions with the city, and we would just pay the city the labor cost for providing that service in the system because we're responsible for the management and operation of the city. I mean, of the utility system. That kind of shows the Millville system doesn't go away. Some have gotten kind of scared around, oh, this is about selling our assets, selling our utility system, privatizing our infrastructure. This is by no means a privatization play. This is a partnership play through a concession agreement. As you can see in that, the ownership with Millville continues. BCP Infrastructure Fund comes in to provide for the responsibilities associated with the financing of the system and its operations. Yeah, question.
I'm trying to understand, how do you guys make money?
We look for a good rate of return. So our investment groups are predominantly pension funds, unions. IBW, UAW have already committed funds to us in this fund, as have some teacher unions. Baltimore Teachers Union, firefighters and police of Baltimore are in our fund. They are looking for a long-term, solid, secure rate of return. Water and sewer systems provide for that. They're an annuity. So we're effectively giving you cash for a future cash stream now. And to our investors, that looks like a good, solid, secure annuity. I mean, the bet is that Millville is a good, solid community, maybe with some growth, and that people need water and sewer and will continue to need such.
So
that's the bet, and
you
that they
make
pay
money
that service.
based on providing funds for us to better our system, and then as we pay you back, it's almost like you're the bank?
Yeah, I like to think of it, the analogy I use that I think is kind of the straight guy talk on is if you owned a home and you took a second mortgage on it to be able to say, I want to use, look, I've got a couple $1,000s of asset value in my home that I can't put to work, and I want to go buy a second home down the shore. I could take a private equity loan on a home equity loan on my first property and use that funding to elsewhere for my capital needs, whatever I want to do, and I still get to use my home, right? Now I have some future cash flow associated with that. The future cash flow in our system and what we're talking about are the ratepayers. Today, the city knows that in 2020 and in 2021 and in 2022, you're going to get a water and a sewer rate to operate your water and sewer system and provide that service. We're basically saying, hey, we're going to buy out that future cash stream so you get money now to deploy as you see fit and you utilize. I like to call it as, managing our assets better. You're managing your assets better to utilize money that you have tied up, value that you have tied up in your sewer system right now that you can't use. That value is the future cash stream. It's the future revenue stream. And so we come in and we basically pay you for that today, for that future cash stream. We do this all open book. We can run you through models and show you how that works and why we believe. Look, I wouldn't be here today if this didn't make money for Bernhard Capital. I also wouldn't be here passionately telling you, I think this is a great deal for Millville. I think you're crazy not to look at this as a really good opportunity. Because it's done in partnership, because it's open, because you will see how the value, you're utilizing value of something that you have today that you can't use. The value of your utility system. We're not telling you
Money
to sell
that
it.
will eventually generate.
Money that will eventually generate from rates, sure. But the knowledge that you have today that someone's going to pay for sewer and water in the year 2025 doesn't help you with your 4.5% tax increase.
But you would give us, supposedly
I can help
speaking,
you with your 4.5% tax increase.
you could give us the monies, and then later on you would be repaid by the revenue generated from the users paying their bill.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right. And again, like I said, very, very upfront. Let me keep going through my deck. But these are good questions because it's in this that we think it's important. In any deal like this, it doesn't work unless there's a need and a want in the community.
Right.
For hey, let me use that value, and there's value in the partnership. In other words, we don't believe that we could come in and operate your system any better than you can. We believe that we could bring some resource because of the experience that I have in 35 years of utility system operations that might help Millville. Great, let's do that. But we're not in here saying we're going to cut and slash. In fact, we make commitments. Same employees, same head count, no changes, pay and benefits. This isn't some sleight of hand that we're going to save money operationally. In fact, we need to have this in a partnership where we believe and trust each other because why? We're dependent on you in the future. We're signing up for a concession agreement that says we don't know what's going to happen 15 years from now in terms of the need of the sewer system here. There may be capital expenditures required. And who's committed to put that money up? We are. Not the city anymore. But we need a good relationship and have the city say, these are good people to work with and they take care of our employees well and we work well with them and they've been open book. Why do we need that? Because we will eventually come to you and say, we got to work together and solve how we're going to do this next thing. And how do we do that? Right? How do we do that together? What are the rate implications? But we're taking that risk. And how we mitigate that risk is knowing that we know how to work with people and work in ways, open book, in partnerships that can create a win-win, certainly a win-win for Millville. So again, our commitment to the employees. This is a quick tear sheet for you that's pretty simple. It's publicly available information. It talks to what we found on your system in terms of the financials. Commissioner Pepitone, to your question, this is kind of where we got to the revenues, what the EBITDA is, how we get to what the value is, and what we think your debt is from publicly available info. What we would do with your interest and support, we would assign a team to do a due diligence review. We've done a little bit of a desktop review. But we would ask for your approval with an MOU to come in and partner with your utility staff. We have local contractors and friends that we use. We have a lot of, obviously, contacts throughout the industry. but we would put some resource in to look at the long-range plan, look at the capital needs, look at the existing rate structure, finalize our number and offer to you. We would be able to do that in about a 45-day period, come in with an indicative offer, and then solidify through a contract agreement a firm offer that we could solidify. All of that we believe is a 90-day activity. I think I'll give you a couple notes on this. We have extensive operational infrastructure experience. We have gone and hired a few people much brighter than I, but with resumes that look like mine, with many years of experience in the utility and water, sewer, electric, transmission distribution business, gas business, upstream and downstream. Innovative partnership structure, I think you can see my passion about that. Allows you to, you're recycling your assets, you're using your asset value differently, but still maintaining the ownership. We have a very strong track record, I believe. I will tell you this, and we met with the mayor and explained to him why we thought this was great, and he said, this is something I'd like to explore, come talk to us. Millville it's not the typical target for Bernhardt Capital. It's a $32 million enterprise value. We'll firm that up together, sharpen our pencils and say what that is together, but it's like around that value. We're really kind of north of, that doesn't move the needle much for a billion-dollar fund. That said, we're interested in the area. We're local. We have a local presence. We think there's wonderful things going on not only here but in Cumberland County. We have some interest in seeing how we can bring to bear some of our capital resources in partnerships in Cumberland County, what with fiber optic considerations and emergency 911 systems, all good safety improvement things. There's other things that we'd like to get involved in. My point is, other things we'd like to get involved. You're early for us. I think there's benefit for Millville being early. I think there is. If you find that this is something that could satisfy and help you and help the needs of your shareholders, your stakeholders here. That's it. I'll open it up to questions
Ron,
to you.
hold on a second. Our CFO is here. Marcy, can you come up?
I just had one question. First of all, I want to explain that if anything you do with utility can't necessarily help you with the current fund. You have the current fund, you have water and sewer. It's like three different companies. You can't just take money from water to help offset tax increases in the current fund. So I just wanted to make sure I explained that. And also, my advisors reviewed your presentation that you had given to us over the phone, and their question was, where have you done this before in New Jersey? Because there's certain rules and regulations you have to follow in the state of New Jersey. And I believe from a purchasing aspect, we would have to make this available to several other companies before we could commit to going with them in an MOU.
Okay.
My understanding that they need. So that's just, I wanted to know if there was anywhere else in New Jersey that you might have done.
We have not done concession agreements in New Jersey. We do have multiple concession agreements in other states. There are concession agreements that are predicate in Jersey. Edison is going through one right now. I think Bayonne. There's quite a.
Could they make it available to other companies, I think was their question, just to make sure that the city was doing their due diligence and making this opportunity available to, other companies, and whoever gave us the best deal is who we would go with.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate. Look, there are I think places where bid, RFPs and RFQs and such are appropriate. It's been our experience that the partnerships work better. There's a heck of a resource that needs to be put in for developing having the appropriate due diligence to get to what's really right and fair for your constituents, right, and what's right and fair for those who are investing and taking the risk on capital. To get to that, there's an awful lot of due diligence and therefore cost. We're willing to absorb that cost and do that in a partnership with the city. I think what you find is everybody's boat floats higher when you get into a big bid process on something like this. Bid relationships are good where you're doing a contract service. They typically end up being more like parent-child relationships, service provider relationships. The concessions agreements really are partnerships where we're open book with each other, we're working with each other. If there were a need to have this go to bid, to be honest, I don't know that we'd participate in that, given the size and nature of this. But nonetheless, if it were to go to bid, I would offer to mayor and friends alike, I would offer to you our thoughts about what you need to consider as you go consider other players in that regard. How the money gets used is an interesting question, and it's certainly one for the city. That said, I think as we've talked to people in various locations about this, they find that that which has gotten them into the budget hole at times was expenditure of funds for various things that otherwise could have been expended elsewhere, money used elsewhere. And so how we could fund something into the city is certainly a city issue, and with your financial controls and such. We would only offer that we are flexible in how we can attend to that for you, if in fact there's an opportunity for you to proceed.
Well, I think, Ron, the reason why you're here is to do your explanation. I thought it was a good one, and I see that we have to do more homework, I think, together as to what we want to do, what it is that we want to do, if we want to do it, and we can all sit down and talk, not at something like this, but I have my superintendents here from water and sewer. I'm glad they're here. And maybe we can all sit down and talk about this a little bit more. I'm truly interested in it. The more information we get, the more knowledge we get, and then we can come up with a better decision if we're going to make a decision as to what we're going to do with our utilities. Any questions, commissioners?
Yeah, I'm still curious about where else you're doing this at, or where have you done it at?
So we have a concession agreement signed in Ascension Parish in Louisiana. We have a concession agreement with a couple hospital systems where we operate all of their energy and water and heating and cooling systems. Our Lady of Lourdes, I think, is one of the hospital systems in Louisiana. Has 14 different hospitals and campuses. Some others.
University of Arkansas Medical School, the University of New Mexico, and like Ron said, this structure essentially has been put in place up in Bayonne, New Jersey, and is currently being contemplated in Edison as well by other folks involved, not us, but larger players like Suez and KKR Capital out of New York.
So Bayonne is up and running
That one,
as a city?
Bayonne's been like years, right?
Right.
8 years or so. Don't quote me on that. But
Any other questions?
I do have one question. One of the comments, thank you very much for providing the presentation today and also emphasizing that this is not a privatization of our utility model, but rather a way to assess and manage our capital more effectively to provide a return. In terms of what the general public would probably understand when they hear the asset management, would the basic tasks for the assessment or the management of our assets include reinvestment of that capital into solid or conventional or even trying to think in terms of just safe or secure bonds that would provide a return for the city? If you could just provide just a basic or a specific response regarding the asset management phase, does that include a reinvestment or an investment of our capital into an investment model or a fund?
yeah, actually, it's not. It doesn't prescribe that. The city could do that. But like I said before, most of the locations where we found this to actually have some interest and traction is where there's really a need. It's not monetize this asset so I can invest it in a fund and get some other return on it for my city. It's give me that money not so I can invest it because I need a new police station kind of thing, or I'm going to put it in this economic development fund, or I'm going to use it to offset, some things. So we enable a city to do that, but we don't provide a vehicle for the reinvestment of those funds. I mean, I guess you could reinvest back in the fund through our municipal infrastructure fund like a pension plan does. But that, no. When I mentioned asset management, I meant more to this effect. Today, you have an asset that's a bank account that has some balance in it, and you can draw on that to provide for 3 new police officers, or contribute to some capital to redo the air conditioning in this building. We could help with that too. We do energy services stuff.
Easy.
But
Hey, Ron, your time's up.
The asset that you have, and it's a true asset, it's worth something in this sewer system you can't draw a check on. We're opening that up for you. That's what I mean by asset management. You're managing that asset now in this agreement in a way that allows you to utilize the value of it in needs for your constituents in ways that you couldn't do before because it was just a sewer system. You knew you were going to get a rate of $56 a quarter or whatever it is every year from so-and-so, but you couldn't use it elsewhere. That's what I meant.
Thank you. I was just seeking to clarify whether it was, if this were an investment platform, or at least were a forum for an investment, whether this would be considered aggressive or whether it would be considered to be conservative. But if it does not entail that, that was just the clarification that I sought to provide
Good question.
to the public.
And to that question, now that I understand, this fund would be considered a more conservative fund. We meet with the pension fund people. They're interested in this. We meet with the unions. They're interested in this. We meet with other type of money people for some of our other funds that are a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more risk, some of the energy services companies. The beauty of these, lower return for the investors, but solid return so long as you believe that the community's solid.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Cooper?
So, Ron, I understand. So there are investors involved. So are you looking for a particular rate of return as you do business? What are we looking at here?
So our investors have long-dated liabilities of pension obligations, for example, and they're looking for what we call modest returns of 8 to 11%. And so basically,
What was that? I didn't hear you.
8 to 11%.
Okay.
And so the way we would price this out in terms of how we would derive the value is we take an estimate of the cash flow that's going to be generated by the water and wastewater utility over the period of the concession and discount that back at 8 to 11%, and that would form the value we would provide to the city. 8 to 11% is about what Atlantic City Electric earns. And so it's a reasonable rate of return that our investors hire us to find investment opportunities to deliver them.
And so when we talk about rates, are the rates negotiated between you and the city at this? Is
Yes.
that how that's done?
Negotiated. The city has authority and maintains authority. In a concession agreement, the city still has that. We come and say, and as we would, quarterly an update, here's the plan. Periodically, we would have our update of our 5-year capital plan. And here's where we think pump station number 3 is going to need to be replaced as opposed to just repaired. And we would project all that. And if and where that shows that there would be rates, the city would have authority to set that rate. And we would be in negotiation, full, open kimono on, here's why we think we need that money. And here's the risk if we don't invest it. We think we bring some pretty good experience that's going to help the city and help the utility managers and the utility workers in saying, hey, there's some best practices that they're using over there that we could use here in helping to, improve predictive maintenance technologies or what have you. There are opportunities, but this is by no means a takeover or a privatization. This is an acknowledgement that you've got a good operating asset with good employees that has a good cash flow in the future. Question is, you want to use some of it? That's the question.
Our administrator has a question, Regina.
I've been privy to this conversation earlier, so I have a little bit of, so basically, for everyone to understand, you're going to hand us $20 million, whatever, and your rate of return on the $20 million has to be somewhere between 8 and 11%. So the revenue that we have to return to you each year has to basically be between 8 and 11% of the $20 million for you to be profitable. Correct?
A little different.
Well, we take the risk that the cash flow we're going to receive, and we now basically receive the customer bills payments of the system. We take the risk that achieves only 8 to 11%.
But as
it's
a person
not
who's
guaranteed
been
by
in
you.
government for 29 years, pays salaries continue to go up, and we continue. So when it comes to a point where you're not going to get enough rate of return in our partnership, and the only solution is to increase the rates or to fix a well, how much play does the city really have? It's going to have to be done in order to make your rate of return. Like, you're going to have to protect yourself somehow.
I would just offer that in this concession agreement, it's no different than that very situation that you have today. It's no different. When your utility director comes and says, I gotta fix this thing, it's no different situation.
Right, and I guess that's really the best way for us to look at it is whatever 8 to 11% on $20 million is, that's the kind of revenue we have to generate every year. And I guess there is some risk, but ultimately, if this deal is written in the way it is we have to have that much revenue each year, so the increases would come when we weren't hitting that benchmark in some way.
No, there is no backstop that we ask the city. We do not require that the city provide us with some return. We acknowledge.
Okay, I'm not a proponent. I can understand using our cash flow. It makes sense. It does make sense. But my question here is, if this is a partnership and next year we decide, you know what, everybody gets a 40% pay increase, then what do you do?
That's troublesome.
Well, that's what I mean. There has to be, you're smart men. Like, there has to be some type of parameters.
Yeah, that's where the partnership comes in. Is we
Right,
work
and
with
that's
you.
like, I
and,
think
yeah.
to make us comfortable is, you're business people. We understand that. Like, what kind of benchmarks and parameters do you put in that we're held to? So we can anticipate, are we going to be able to handle upgrades to the system? Are we going to be able to handle not generating the revenue you need, so we need a rate increase? And we're going to have rate increases whether we enter this deal or not. That's human nature. But that's what we have to look at.
Good point.
And how many years have you been involved in the water sewage business?
Me personally, I'm a power generation, transmission, distribution, utility side person. But in our group, we have multiple folks that have been water system people through water and sewer. We actually almost every kind of infrastructure. We've got bridge building specialists in our fund.
I got you.
So we've kind of focused our hiring around infrastructure spend, with our thesis being there's a lot of need for infrastructure spend.
Yeah, we'd be happy to come back and introduce you
That's
to
what I
some
was
of our
going to
water
say.
experts.
Jeff?
Yes, sorry.
That's what I was going to say. I said that, Virginia, you brought up a great question. I think what we need to do is a sit-down meeting where we can all relax and have air conditioning, Ron. And then we can talk about this and see what the positive and negatives are for the city. And if, in fact, we're going to do it. I think it's a great idea, but I think Regina brought up a great question. What if?
And it might work.
Absolutely.
It's
But
in
it's
other
something
words,
we need to
we're not
talk
sitting
about.
with an asset down there where $20 million we can't do anything with. But we have to
Exactly.
realize what our exposure is as a
And
city.
exactly what Marcy said, same thing.
My point is, though, that the state of New Jersey has to allow you to do this. When I sell bonds, the state of New Jersey, I have to send my resolution to the state of New Jersey for them to approve. Phoenix Advisors told me when I introduced them to this plan that you gave us, and of course, I would love to have $20 million, it's great, but they seem to think that there needs to be some state approval of this whole process. The state will not allow you to just enter into a partnership.
Well, I think that's where we can investigate Bayonne. Let's see how Bayonne did it. It's something we need to do our homework with as to how they're doing it and how Edison's doing it, and maybe we'll get those answers. That's why we need to have a closed session or just a meeting between us downstairs and work some things out and ask other questions. But I appreciate your presentation.
And Edison's contemporary. I mean, it's right now.
Right, perfect.
I think what the public hears is privatization.
Right.
So I think we have to have a clear distinction of whether it is or not. Potato, right? So we're talking about, is it privatization, concession, using another word? What's the difference? Give us a clear-cut line on what makes this different.
Well, privatization is the sale of the asset.
They take over.
It's full-out sale
Take
of
over.
the asset. You get
Which you're
paid
not
out.
doing.
And
No.
you don't own it anymore. Titles are transferred. Employees are transferred. All of that. in a concession agreement, and there's various different ways to structure it, but it's over a period of time, you're allowing for us to oversee, operate, and maintain the utility system. We do that for you for the rates. So the ratepayers, the checks that you get today that come in for utility and water, now come to us. What do you get? You still own it. You get $20 million, or what the number we come to after due diligence, but you get $20 million to deploy as you see fit.
That's up front.
Up front.
Okay.
Up front. Now, if you say, well, we'd really rather have it, $5 million a year over 4 years, we structure it that way. I mean, whatever, the last year would be $6 million because we had the money longer than you did, so the time value of money, whatever. We would work all that stuff out. But in a concession agreement, you still own, you still have rate-making authority. Most important. It also happens that you still maintain the employees, they still maintain civil service as city employees, if that's what they are today. Union agreements are all still held. Most of the companies that we deal with own and or have come from are all, union, whether it be building trades or in-house unions. So we're very familiar with that.
Commissioner, I think, again, we need to sit down. Ron, I appreciate your presentation. We appreciate what you told us, and we'll have another meeting in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Our next presentation is from Frank Riesenberg. Frank?
Good evening, members of the Board of Commissioners, City Clerk, City Administrator, City Solicitor. It's a pleasure to be here. The presentation I'd like to make tonight concerns essentially three matters that I've been involved with the city for a few years now as Environmental Special Counsel or Special Environmental Counsel. And they are the airport, G Street property, also known as the old Wheaton site on Main Road, as well as G Street, and also a new matter that I've had now an opportunity to discuss with Samantha Silvers. First of all, on the airport, this is a contamination event or site that has existed for a number of years. The actual, if you dust them off, first reports seem to have occurred around 1989, 1990. And one of the first things that the city did, which is exceptional in the way it turned out, was to put in a groundwater treatment plant. The groundwater treatment plant has been in operation since at least 1993, 1994, and it was there for a number of purposes. First of all, there are recovery wells. There are still 3 recovery wells that are operating. These recovery wells take the contaminated groundwater, which is contaminated primarily with solvents. You probably heard of PCE and TCE. They're common solvents that are used in industrial applications, particularly around heavy machinery. And the water from these recovery wells goes into the treatment plant, and it gets cleaned up. And to this day, the licensed site remediation professional, Kathy Stetzer, who's with GEI in charge of the cleanup operations, is amazed at how effective the system has been. So what we want to do is we want to take the water before it goes further off to the east and into any residential areas and capture it and have it treated. This has worked very well. The system is so old that the computer operates under the old DOS system, and you can imagine it breaks down once in a while. But so far, the folks in charge, Terraneer, have been able to, and also GEI, have been able to find replacement parts to keep it going. And it's functioning very well today. In fact, since 2017, it has substantially increased its capacity to deal with the water. The second reason why this is so important, and once again, making sure the water doesn't reach the folks to the east, is that it also results in hydraulic control. What's hydraulic control? Hydraulic control is if you have pumps sucking water from an area underground, the groundwater, and it continues to suck it, it creates what's known as a drawdown. It creates almost a natural flow away from the east. And that's what you have here. So you have cleanup contamination, and you also have the drawdown, which effectively limits the ability of this contaminated plume to go further to the east. And that has been very, very successful. It is now estimated, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty now. The last couple of years have been very important in a few manners. First of all, we've had on-site cleanup. That has involved excavation at various areas, which we call the RTC ditch. It's on Bogdan Boulevard as you go in. It's around 25 Airworks Street, but a little bit to the north. And we've had excavations in a place called PT6, which I can show you on a map, should you be interested. And I'm sure you are. And we've had some other excavations that have taken place. We've also had opportunities to find out which buildings may be impacted by what we call vapor intrusion inside a building. And we've also found out that the event of contamination has resulted in the old Wheaton hangar, where there's a helicopter operation now. There's a helicopter repair operation now. They run helicopters for emergencies to hospitals. We found that that has an indoor vapor intrusion issue. We've had to address that, and it has been addressed. A mitigation system has already been put in, and the testing of that mitigation system started today. The person who's been responsible for the captaining of the decisions made for the remediation, Kathy Stetzer at GEI, is very happy with how that has progressed. Now, getting down to the nitty-gritty end point, we're getting there. The GEI folks are going to come out with a scope of work probably in the next 6 to 8 weeks, which will be for a lot of money, but which will, over time, result in a reduced total expenditure to clean up the groundwater. Now, the groundwater has been cleaned up to some extent, but it still gets dirty because of soil. There's a lot of soil contamination around there. And when it rains and when waters are dissipated on the ground, it goes down into the soil and it goes into the groundwater. So GEI has identified the key area of concern, and it's what's called the electroplating building. Now, just so you'll know, do all you know where the Q hangar is? The Q hangar is that building next to and to the east of the Boeing hangar. It looks like Swiss cheese, okay? And that's being kind. In the back of it is where the treatment works is located. It's a wooden building, treatment works, it's going good. To the right of it, in back of the warehouses, is what's called as the electric plating building. And the extent to which that's going to have to be demoed, we don't know yet. It's still being studied. But a large part of it will be demoed, and there will be an enormous amount of soil excavated from that area because it is the key contributor to the groundwater contamination. Next, there's going to be an SVE system that will be put in, again, to deal with soil vapor, which comes from these PCE and TCE chemicals. And that's going to involve an injection system which goes down to the ground and will bring the vapors up to the atmosphere where they will not be bothering anybody. Those are the two major elements that are going to take place. The anticipated expense for that hard remediation that is going to be taking place, soil, which impacts the groundwater, will be about $2.93 million or something like that. Now, the city is the owner of the airport. As the owner, it's responsible for 15%. There are other people, of course, and companies that were the ones who contaminated or responsible for the contamination, and there are 3 others. They contribute to it as well. This is known as the Former Airwork Facility Group, FAFG. And it operates under a joint responsibility agreement which was signed in 2007, which obviously has operated very well. We're still doing that today. So that is the next step. Ultimately, the endpoint is what is known as a mandatory framework for contamination. Each site has its own date. Our date is May 7th, 2023. It is therefore very important that the events of the next 7 or 8 months occur and be directed to excavating out this cancer that continues to impact the groundwater. So we're going to see a lot of activity there once the scope of work that's going to be issued is approved over the next 7, 8 months.
And 15% of that is our.
That's correct. 15% of that is yours. After that, the benefits of the soil vapor system, extraction system, should be obvious. And then there's a 2-year period of time in which the monitoring wells are going to be monitored to show what's known as a decreasing trend. There has been a decreasing trend anyway, but now there's going to be even more of a decreasing trend. And after you're able to show for 8 quarters or 2 years a decreasing trend, the licensed environmental professional is able to put in for what we call an RAO, which is a remedial action outcome, which means that most of the work is done. And we have a mandatory time frame, as I said, of May 7th, 2023, and that's why things are going to really ratchet up now in terms of getting this job done. It's been done in a very professional way. Very pleased with the way GEI is performing its duties. And one of the side chapters that we have to deal with is that the electroplating building falls into an historic district determined by the State Historic Preservation Authority as being an historic area. So we're going to have to weave our way through that and determine to what extent we can get relief from that historic district determination. And the DRBA, which holds a ground lease on a lot of the airport through 2030, is working with us in trying to reshuffle the deck as to where that historic district is going to be located. You may be aware, but the DRBA has some plans of additional investments in different areas that are not in the historic district. So we're going to work with them in trying to get those things approved as well. Now, before I go on to G Street, does anybody have any questions about the airport? Okay. G Street. G Street is subject to a number of ISRA requirements. ISRA, as you know, is a law in New Jersey which is very unique to New Jersey, and it requires that certain businesses who want to go out of business or sell or cease doing business have to make sure that they clean up. And we've had a successive series of owners on the G Street property that have promised to do it and have not. The burden to do so now rests on Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto is an international conglomerate, and they have met their burdens. My job has been to make sure that they do it the right way. And at some time in the beginning, we had some problems, but not now. They understand that they're being watched and that they're being required to do things in an appropriate manner. They have spent well over $7 million so far on getting that site remediated, which is again a site that involves volatile organics, PCE, TCE, again, primarily from machinery operations, and some other contaminants. And they have identified certain areas that in the future will have to be deed restricted to industrial and commercial use, not residential. And they are ready now to go into their next phase. Previously, they cleaned up Ada Pond. I don't know if you've walked by there, but Ada Pond's a nice place to go. You take a look at it. They did a great job. They've also excavated various areas that were heavily soil contaminated, and now they're going to go into the groundwater phase. What they're using is a DGR system, which is a direct groundwater washing system, and what it does is bring up groundwater and through wells, and then discharges it back into the ground, and it's what's known as a washing system. Now, for the last 4 to 5 months, Rio Tinto has been ready to go to put their system in. Their system has been shared with you. Any questions you have, I'll be able to talk to you about it. It's a system of a lot of pipes and pumps and in different areas on the property that have already been determined to be the case. And also, they are needing 2 deed restrictions. The deed restrictions have to do with certain areas where you can't go into an existing building, or if the existing buildings are demolished, you're going to have to put down what I called before, if you remember, a mitigation system. They're not that expensive, but it enables a sub-slab mitigation system to be sure that in the future any new buildings will not have any impacts from these volatile organics. Fine. Therefore, the folks over at Rio Tinto have provided to me, and we've negotiated the form of the deed notice, and they've again said they're ready to go on the groundwater treatment system. An overlay on that is the interest in the purchase of the property by what I call the DeSantis Group. I understand they've been before you, and they've indicated an interest in purchasing the property. In the middle of April or thereabouts, I got a note from Brock that I would be asked to prepare a purchase and sale agreement and all the other things that go with it to tie this thing up and to make sure that we as a city don't represent anything. We're not making any representations. You want it, you got it. It was delivered to Louis Magazoo on April 29th, and we haven't heard a thing. So we don't know what's going on, but what we do know is that under an agreement dated February 21, 2017 with Rio Tinto, where Rio Tinto proceeds forward with all of the work necessary to clean up the site in accordance with the requirements of the DEP, we have to do certain things also, like sign deed restrictions or deed notices and give them access to and let them go ahead with their ability to put this DRG system in play. I thought the best thing to do would be to tie it all up together, make sure that we get agreements from Rio Tinto, which we have, make sure that the DeSantis Group buys into it, and we go home. That hasn't happened. We haven't heard from the DeSantis Group. So in closed session, I would like to go over with you in a deliberative fashion some recommendations of what we do next instead of just waiting. Any questions?
Any questions, Commissioner?
I'm excited.
Pardon?
I'm excited to see
Okay.
where we're going with this.
Yes. The next thing is Samantha Silvers brought to my attention that the city of Millville has, through tax foreclosures, acquired some properties which might be contaminated. Number one, there is a form that you have to fill out if you have a property that is now owned by the city that has been acquired by tax foreclosure, which exempts you from liability for any environmental contamination that may be found on that property, as long as you don't do anything to cause some new contamination. And that has to be sometimes very carefully monitored, because you may be demolishing the buildings, there may be tanks that have to be removed, and a bunch of other things. I mentioned to Samantha that there are a whole host of grants available to cities and municipalities throughout New Jersey for investigating and for remediating contaminated sites which they have acquired because of the foreclosure avenue. That just makes sense. I mean, you didn't do anything. You just want to get this property back into a viable condition to be put on the ratables again. And we're going to be providing with Samantha with that information so that she can go ahead and make those applications. Additionally, Samantha has been introduced to what's known as data miner, and she is now an expert in the making in finding out all kinds of things on her own about environmentally contaminated sites, of which there are records in the public. Any questions? Fire away, and I look forward to chatting with you later on in the executive session.
Any questions? Commissioners, no? We'll be chatting in that closed session, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, the clerk thought that since the agenda is relatively light tonight for the regular meeting, that perhaps we want to put the closed session matters until after the agenda.
It's
I mean,
fine.
that's your call.
I would
Then
agree
you're
with
not
that.
going to have
That's
people
fine.
out in the hallway
Absolutely.
waiting.
For what we have coming, right? Any commissioners
No, I think it's a great idea.
that don't agree with that? No? Okay. Thank you so much, Frank, Mr. Riesenberg. All right. Guess what? We're now at the public comment on agenda item. Anyone that'd like to make a public comment on agenda item, please step up to the mic. We're still in work session. And state your comments. Limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. And your name. Seeing no one, I close the public comment on agenda items only. Old business, please.
There is no old business, Mayor.
Discussion of commissioners. Commissioner Cooper,
Not at this time, Mayor.
Commissioner Pepitone,
Nothing else, sir?
Commissioner Dalvis,
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
myself. Now, new business, please.
There is no new business, Mayor.
All right, we've now reached the public comment portion of our meeting. Anyone would like to address this commission, please go to the podium. State your name and address your concerns, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. Seeing no one, I close the open public close the public portion part of this meeting. Comments of commissioners? No? Okay, we are not going to go into the resolution, or we are?
We can pass it to hold it after the 7 p.m. meeting if you'd like. We could do that now.
Okay, yes.
Right? We can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, it's part of the regular meeting.
So
Actually,
what we're
I'm sorry.
doing is, although we're going to read the
no,
resolution.
we actually have to do it at the regular meeting because it does become part of that meeting. I'm sorry, my
Okay.
mistake. Yeah,
So
so
we
the
need
next meeting. We'll pass it at the next meeting.
Okay,
We
so
need to
the-
adjourn the,
We'll adjourn right now. We'll
Right.
adjourn the work session
and then go into the regular meeting.
and go into regular.
Right.
Okay.
Make a
So
motion
we're
to adjourn.
Let's adjourn the, I'm sorry?
Make a motion.
All right,
Second the motion.
Thank you.
comments?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Aye. Thank you.